to the board at the time that we should not continue to keep this on the books because it's, by keeping it on the books, it's exempt from a lot of natural resource standards. So the board chose not to give the developer or the property owner any more extensions, and so now this project is subject to our current standards. So this concept that the developer was floating to the township is, I think this one has probably about 97 units, which is a lot more than what the zoning by right allows. At this point, the developer was kind of, this developer also owns the property on Colonial and Big Road, this one here. So he was proposing some variations between all the properties on Heimbach and this property on Colonial and Big Road, trying to kind of shift some densities around, and was trying to sort of make some offers in exchange for different things. And eventually, he didn't seem to want to give the township what we were asking for as far as like a by right plan, so we could really see what the true number of units could be on these properties. And so the last we heard from the developer is that he was just going to go develop a by right plan, which could include multifamily apartments. And so we're waiting. So there's no activity on this, there's no official application, but these are some of the concepts that were put out there to the township over the last couple of years.
So apartment buildings are on the
Yep, apartment buildings are an option. Okay, any questions on that?
He hasn't been back since October of last year.
Correct. Yeah. All right, this plan is a plan on Big Road near Ivy Lane. This property received conditional use approval in 2022. This project is for, it's kind of hard to describe it really. It's for like small kind of office, but more for like contractors. So originally the owner of this property wanted to do residential units on this property. It's zoned commercial, so that would have required a zoning change. This property owner has 29 EDUs. So basically an EDU is a unit of sewage capacity for a residential unit. So he originally was hoping to be able to do 29 dwellings on this property. When he came to the board at the time, they said, no, that's too many. Even though you have that capacity in the sewer plant, we're not willing to support that number of residential units. So he went away, he came back with this office, this kind of contractor office space. It went through the planning commission review and then conditional use hearing with the board of supervisors. They have conditional use approval, but they don't have land development approval. So that would be the next step when they decide to move forward. It would come back. So what that means is this is the layout that he presented during the conditional use process, but it's not necessarily the layout that has to be approved by the township. We could require him to kind of reconfigure it if there are concerns about the layout. So that's something, if the owner decides to move forward with this development, that is something that you guys could see.
This is South Appia, Mr. Lampman? Is that who this is?
Yeah.
This isn't in this, that's not on this document.
It's not, because it's from 2022. And that document, that's the summary of 2023 of the Planning Commission. But I just wanted to share this with you,
Yep.
just to give you some background. Okay. Any questions on that one? All right. So those are really kind of the big plans that have been active in the township for the last couple of years. And that,
Are there any other properties that have been sold and maybe we just haven't heard from potential developers or?
not that I've heard of. Doesn't mean that there isn't something that could pop up, but at this point I haven't heard of anything. I do know across the street from Ivy Ridge, that property owner has been interested in developing for 20 years. They've been sitting on that property, but they're sort of waiting to see what happens with sewer and that sort of thing.
What's the zoning there?
That one is residential and commercial, it's a mix.
And sewage comes in, it all comes in.
Well, and that's because of that sort of thing, you know, the past supervisors took the approach that they did not want the developer to build extra capacity into the sewer plant, but rather design it so that it could be expanded in the future, so that the township has control over potential expansion and development. When you guys get an application that includes a sewer plant, you guys will have to decide how you want to approach that. But at this point, you know, we don't have an application. The discussion has been, though, that when a sewer plant goes in there, the Frederick Living sewer plant will be decommissioned and it will have to go into it. So that'll be a DEP requirement, just because the new plant will be much more environmentally friendly, sound. And so the old plant will get decommissioned. Okay.
Are we up on, well, like all the zoning, all the ordinances, everything we can do to tighten this township down to discourage as best we can?
So, you know, there's always things that pop up
Sure.
along the way. I mean, we've done a lot of upgrades over the last 10 or 15 years. Could we do more? Potentially. I mean, a couple things came up at the planning commission meeting. Yeah, you were there.
Yeah.
And so we'll definitely look into them. And,
That's
you know,
one thing I think we'll do as best we can, correct?
Yeah.
Just tighten it up as best we can.
Sure, sure. This page is just a list of some of the ordinance updates that have been undertaken over the last couple years. Water protection standards, this had to do with expanding the protections of people with wells near development, requiring more monitoring and bringing control to the Board of Supervisors more so than it had been before. The adaptive reuse standards for historic structures, that's still in review with Planning Commission, so they're still reviewing that. Parking updates, those were adopted just recently. The Planning Commission did talk about the distance, the 500 feet that had been discussed during the adoption of the parking updates, and they seem to think that the language was fine the way it is at this point. Sewage disposal standards update, that has to do with requiring new sewer plants to be located in the higher density zones where they'll be serving, the development they'll be serving, rather than putting a sewer plant for a high density development off in a low density area of the township. And then there were some updates to stormwater management requirements as far as new impervious that's over 1,000 square feet, making it cumulative. So in other words, if somebody comes in with a 500 square foot addition and then they come in 2 years with a 600 foot addition, we would add them together and cumulatively they would trigger stormwater management. And then the Planning Commission and you guys did approve recently the agricultural security application. So those are kind of the big things, big development, big code updates that we've done. Some of the planning commission's action items for 2024, reviewing the township plans here at the township building, lot consolidation, things to allow expansion here at the township campus, implementation of recommendations of the comprehensive plan, continuing to support agricultural activities, continue to investigate and pursue grant opportunities, and then one that came up at the planning commission this past meeting was to look at standards relating to water quality and sewer hookups. So we'll do some more research on those. All right.
Is there a way to identify high-risk properties that we think people are gonna be selling or putting, I mean, to take any pre-action, I don't even know. But is there a way to identify potential opportunities, whether it's to buy back land or preserve land or things of that nature that would prevent people from
developing.
developing?
Well, so I guess, there's a couple challenges. So not exactly, I mean, we can monitor if property is being sold and like who it's being sold to, and, if it looks like it's a developer, we can certainly, make note of that. I think our challenge is we don't have an open space tax. So anytime we want to buy something, we're buying it with general fund dollars. A year or two ago, we did contact the property owner behind our property here about the possibility of purchasing some of the back of their property to kind of expand the township property here. But the price that, the appraisal that came in, they weren't interested. It was just too low. So, I mean, we can certainly identify areas of the township that might be high priority and, try. We could always reach out to property owners like we did back here and see if there's a willingness. I think it's the sort of thing though, when we get into the budget process in the fall, if that's a priority for the board, then we're gonna have to figure out how to work it into our budget.
Was that something that gets put into the comprehensive plan?
It can, yeah.
Because I know you
absolutely.
had mentioned before
Yeah.
that when we bought the
schoolhouse.
schoolhouse, that
Right.
was in the comprehensive plan from years ago, so it had been prioritized.
Right.
So are there ways that we can
Yeah, absolutely,
can
sure. I mean, we
potentially
can
do that with what we might consider to be
Yeah.
high-risk properties?
Or I don't know if high risk, but high priority, maybe for
Mhm.
community.
Preservation.
Preservation,
Yeah.
or, yeah, sure.
Okay.
That's something I talked to Rick about after the planning commission meeting. That is a tax I'd be more than happy to pitch to the community. So walking around, knocking on doors, talking to everybody, I said that. There's other communities out there like Skipback, and some other ones that actually have an open space tax. And they have funding that goes in there, so over time, they can go ahead and make a purchase on land like that. It does say that in the comprehensive plan. And it said too in those, if you read the comprehensive plan, it even states in there, we did two polls at election days, and they say 84% of the people's concern is preserving Upper Frederick and preserving land here. So I was surprised that we never did do that, have that tax or even put it out there. But I said that to Rick, I would like to work with him, because he said he tried to put into place.
Right. Yeah, I know it's been tried,
TRW.
yeah, it's been tried in the past, and,
He said he never got any traction. He said there was just no support for it, but I told him, I said, there's support here now for it, that's for sure. So I think that's something we should all talk about. And, if we can get it up, at least some framework together, maybe even put that on a referendum for the ballot this year. This should be an exciting election. So I think we'll get a fairly good turnout there.
yeah, I mean, if you guys want me to put that as an agenda item in the future, I can put that on for you guys to discuss.
Yeah, I think it'd be good.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
And how we can use, I think, Central Perk Valley Planning Commission to our advantage by being part of
Yeah.
communities that are already have high development. Maybe we can use that to our advantage for staying rural.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Tracy, let me ask you something. So I did learn too about shared zoning. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah. I mean, we sort of do that with the regional planning
Right.
commission.
So it's a slippery slope, you know what I mean? But it can be beneficial to us.
Mhm.
I was just wondering if we did,
Yeah, I
or if
mean,
that's something we could look into about,
we could
just to
certainly-
tighten this up here as best we can.
So we certainly could, yeah, absolutely. I mean, if that's a priority of the board, if you guys, want us to look at, I think you're thinking maybe in terms of maybe trying to shift our high density to elsewhere in the region, is that what you're thinking?
Like out of Upper Frederick?
Yeah.
That's what I'm
Out of Upper Frederick.
That's how I'm looking at this. But I mean, like, yeah, to go ahead and limit it to what we have, I hear apartment buildings down here, that makes my skin crawl, So that's a major priority for me, and then talking, like I said, with the residents, that wasn't just your survey you had done there. That was, that holds true today. The biggest issues that I heard about was the stormwater roads and the agriculture. And when I read the comprehensive plan, it wasn't in your initial one from '08, but it was definitely in your second one. 2019 or 2018, you did one, something like that? Yeah. So yeah, I read that book too.
All right.
All right. Public Works upgrade
All
concept
right.
design.
A couple weeks ago, it was suggested that we should get the architect to give us a proposal to get started on some design work for Public Works. And so that's before you. They have a proposal here for doing all the measurements of everything and the documentation. It's $4,000. The existing building, looks like lower level only, is $4,750. The new addition to the metal garage building is $2,250. And then a new building is $2,000, and then a site plan is $1,250. At this point, given that, we're sort of under the gun to get something moving, I would certainly recommend definitely the addition to the metal garage, the metal building. I think I had shared with you guys by email kind of the equipment list that the guys have, and then how that can fit in the space. And I sat down with Steve Heller and doing a 2-bay addition to our existing whole building back there that's 50 feet deep, plus a lean-to for the trailers, would be enough square footage to be able to get all of his equipment under a roof and still be able to do a locker room, shower area for the guys. There has been talk about maybe doing a separate standalone building next to the salt shed that could be a drive-through. My only hesitation there with that is that that's kind of building our campus around a salt shed that maybe isn't in the best location currently.
I agree.
And I feel like maybe we want to kind of look at the layout overall kind of over time instead of just trying to have an architect quickly
Put
rush a
something
second.
in.
Yeah, we feel confident that expanding the 2 bays off of the existing pole building and making sure that they're deeper and taller, that serves the immediate needs of Public Works, along with the locker room and the showers. So I guess at this point, I would recommend at least moving forward with those pieces and maybe holding off on that standalone building until we have time to really see the best configuration.
Yeah. I spoke with Steve today, and we were talking about that, and I said that very thing to him about moving that salt. And he was like, "Are you kidding me? You know how much work this was?" But he had put it up himself. So it is, like you're saying, if we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it right. You're only gonna move it one more time.
Right.
But I said to him, I looked into those pole buildings myself. And I think it's Lisa's neighbor Stan had one put up. They're relatively inexpensive. And I just put cameras in one. And after I put the cameras in, the guy spray foamed the inside like we have now. And he has heaters in there and everything. It's real nice to work in there. So they're relatively inexpensive.
Well, except that we're a government. So everything is more expensive when you're a government because you have to pay prevailing wage and go through the bidding process and everything. But relatively, yes, a pole building is, you know, relatively inexpensive. Now, it's a mechanic bay, so it's gonna have, you know,
Concrete, yeah.
concrete, and it's gonna have the lift and everything. So, you know, there's, you know, some more costly components to it, but yeah, relative to like building a new office building, it's definitely a lot less.
Yeah, it was soup to nuts, concrete floor, the whole 9 yards. I think it was like 76 feet long, 40 wide. It was 70,000.
Yeah,
It's,
I know.
Yeah.
I wish it was that easy.
so
But,
are
yeah.
you, so on this
Yeah.
document, you gave us the schematic design phase costs from Loose Architecture.
Mhm.
Are you suggesting that we pay for all of these items, or you want to remove
I would say the first.
the separate building?
I would say remove the separate building at this time, until we're able to kind
Which is,
of.
I'm sorry, new building.
Yeah, the new building.
So you, which is 2,000.
Correct. And then, you know, if you guys, the last thing, the site plan, if you want it rendered to kind of give a nice look to a plan, you can have them do that as well. That's up to you. I guess I would suggest the first three. You gotta do the measurements and documentation, do the schematic design for the existing building downstairs, and then the metal expansion addition.
And then if we approve that, how long until we actually get the plans? Because I know,
So these are only
We're
gonna
gonna-
be concept plans.
right,
And then once, so I think it could be a month to 6 weeks is what I'm hoping. And then, once you guys, he's gonna give you some alternatives,
okay.
right? And then once you guys are good with those, then he would go and design, and it'll probably be another couple months. So, you know, we're creeping along.
And then those final designs, we have to do sealed bids for contractors to do the work.
Correct, correct. Unless there are some states, so there are some companies that are sort of pre-approved by the state.
On CoStars.
It's similar to CoStars, but it's different.
Okay.
It's, one of them's called Gordian, and we actually use them to install the fencing down at the dog park. That is a way that you don't have to go out to bid, but a lot of times their prices are a little on the higher side. So, we can certainly kind of get a cost proposal from them once we know what we want, and if it seems like it's too high, we can go out to bid. We can do
Because
something
obviously
like
the money that's at risk here is the 400, I think it's 438.
that.
the
Three,
funds
I think
will-
it's 381.
Oh, 381, 381. Is what we have to make sure that we
Secure.
secure
Yeah.
for this
We
year and
have
have
We have to have it
a
under
contract
contract.
signed.
Correct.
So those options of the pole building for that price, that's just not something that's in our wheelhouse, is that what you're saying? When I said it was like 76 grand, but I told Steve, yeah, he said if he had both those buildings, he'd pretty much be out of here. He'd be able to move everything completely out of this. Not even need the bottom for storage of his
For his lawn stuff.